Hello everyone. In this video we're going to be taking a look at an opinion piece from The Hill. Now this was written by Katie Schofield and it was published on June 11th, and she can just go fuck herself with this one. Myth: Second Amendment protects individual liberties. No, it does protect individual liberties from the tyranny of government and the tyranny of mob rule, because if you have fucking people, say rioting and shit, and they want to, beat the shit out of you, destroy your property and everything else, the Second Amendment allows for you to put a stop to them doing that by dropping fucking lead on them. Jesus Christ, you need to get a clue, woman. Katie, you're a fucking clueless woman. You seriously are clueless, bitch. Heavily armed citizens showed up recently at protests in Wyoming, Pennsylvania, Minnesota, Montana, Colorado, and Idaho to allegedly protected peaceful protesters from Antifa. You mean to allegedly protect peaceful protesters from Antifa? And they actually did protect people from the mob. Okay, because this is what's fucked up. They're talking about these people showing up at the quote-unquote protests. They stopped the looting. Manchester, New Hampshire, people took to the streets to stop the looting. Every place there was someone armed. The fucking scumbags looking to fucking burn shit down in Manchester, New Hampshire and loot. They went someplace else. In Salem, New Hampshire. Because it came out that New York, 2,000 people were coming up from New York to cause shit in Salem, New Hampshire, to loot and to fucking steal and to burn shit down. Between the local PD, all the towns that were brought in, okay, and like cities like Manchester, Nashua, and that. And the average American being armed to the fucking teeth, protecting their personal property, protecting their shit. These motherfuckers chickened out. How the hell is that not the Second Amendment? When people are protecting their property or their friend's property or, just their neighbor's property from these shitbags, and they don't cause shit because they're afraid of getting shot. How is that not the Second Amendment protecting individual liberty? That is literally like a definition of it. One of many. You sleazy, dishonest piece of shit, Katie. You are a scumbag. In Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, groups of 25 to 50 armed men in combat gear spent successive nights patrolling the downtown area, following internet rumors that Antifa agitators would be arriving from Seattle. Well, considering we had credible shit here in New Hampshire in regards to, say, Salem, and I believe Manchester was the same thing, but Salem in particular, the 2,000 people were coming up being bussed in from New York. And this wasn't a rumor on the internet. This was credible shit. The police thought it was credible. The National Guard thought it was credible. You try to make it sound like, they're just peaceful protesters. Then why is they organizing to come up from New York to cause shit in Salem, New Hampshire? And if the cops and the National Guard and average residents of that town weren't out on the fucking streets armed, showing, hey, fuck you, you ain't gonna do shit to my business. If they weren't doing that, those assholes would have fucking tore shit down. They would have fucking burnt this town of Salem, that I'm talking about, to the ground. That's protecting individual liberty. The FBI stated there was no evidence that any protests have been linked to Antifa. Okay, then why were 2,000 people being bussed up to Salem, New Hampshire? Still, President Donald Trump tweeted, domestic terrorists have taken over Seattle, run by radical left Democrats, of course, law and order. And I love how they now bring up the whole thing with Seattle and the fact that you've got some fucking, wannabe washed up hack of a fucking rapper walking around like a fucking warlord, extorting fucking money from businesses there at gunpoint. They're peaceful protests. Yeah, okay. You've got a guy who's declared himself a warlord of a fucking section of Seattle. And he's extorting people for fucking money. He walks into the place and goes, you're going to pay me. And he's toting a fucking AR-15. I don't hear you bitching about that. On his June 1st Rose Garden address, amid vowing to shield American citizens from professional anarchists, violent mobs, or arsonists, looters, criminals, rioters, Antifa, the president promised to protect Second Amendment rights. Well, okay, now this is what's funny. This is what they go into. In January, he tweeted, your Second Amendment is under very serious attack from the great Commonwealth of Virginia, days before a gun rights rally in Richmond. I love how you leave out that in Virginia they were literally going to try to make pretty much every type of firearm fucking illegal. But hey, whatever, let's just ignore that fact. The gun rights rally itself drew 22,000 people, many of them heavily armed and in combat gear, to protest Democratic state legislatures pledged to enact new gun control legislation. You mean gun bans, okay, with the fact of gun registrations and forced buybacks and confiscations. Fuck you. You are a sleazy, dishonest person, Katie. In mid-April, after blue state governors enacted quarantine measures, he also claimed multiple times that these governors were trying to take people's guns away. Because some of them basically were, that's not what he said, though. What he said is they're trying to attack the Second Amendment. All right? They were literally stopping people from buying fucking guns in the midst of a pandemic when shit's going to hit the fan, claiming they were non-essential. That is an attack on the Second Amendment. That's an attack on the individual's right to protect themselves. So that is kind of taking away people's guns. In an odd non sequitur, the president seemed to conclude that lockdown restrictions were also tied to Second Amendment riots. There was no Second Amendment rights. Yes, because you had fucking people, Democrat governors, using the pandemic to stop people from buying fucking firearms, claiming they were not essential, when you have it so that police officers aren't stopping criminals because of the pandemic. Okay, like, say, Pittsburgh, for example. You had, the cops say, hey, nonviolent crime. If they ain't murdering someone, we ain't responding. And people need to defend themselves and protect themselves, protect their property. And Pennsylvania said, you can't get fucking guns. That is an attack on the Second Amendment. That is an attack on the individual's liberty and their ability to defend themselves. You're a fucking sleazy bitch. Less than 2 weeks later, amid anti-lockdown protesters descended upon... Armed anti-lockdown protesters descended on Michigan State House. In response, some state legislators wore bulletproof vests, and the state's legislative session ended early. Yes, because they were virtue signaling, going, my safety, when these were peaceful people. These were law-abiding gun owners, firearms owners. These people are some of the most law-abiding people out there, and they're trying to make it sound like they're fucking criminals because they show up there exercising their Second Amendment right, which they have the right to do. I don't agree with the optics of it because it allowed for these stupid fucks to do this and Katie to fucking twist it even more. But you're trying to make it sound like, they threatened these people. No, they said, look, we want the lockdown to end. Whitmer had tried to enact restrictions on the Second Amendment. They said, fuck you. We like our guns. You're not going to stop us from being able to protect ourselves. That's not a threat. You people are fucking disgusting. Seriously, you and your ilk, Katie, are slime bags. In each instance, armed protesters used the Second Amendment to undermine democracy and individual rights. How the hell did they do that? Watch your fucking gigantic, big-brained leap of logic here. Democratically elected bodies in Virginia and Michigan were effectively threatened if they chose to act on measures, gun control, and an extension of lockdown orders that had wide public support. Now, bullshit. Number one, bullshit. Okay, Virginia, there was not widespread support for their fucking gun confiscation psychotic bullshit. That's why 22,000 people showed up there. That's why they didn't enact it, because they knew it was not popular and they would fuck themselves. They thought they could get in there, do what the fuck they wanted, and they realized they couldn't. All right, and this whole thing with Michigan, they were not threatened. Michigan, Whitmer said, you can't buy a fucking gun. You can't exercise your constitutional rights. So they said, fuck you. They didn't threaten her. They peacefully protested. That's not a threat. They didn't brandish their weapon and say, you will do this. But that's what you're trying to portray it as. And this idea of wide public support. If wide public support was the case, then why are thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people protesting the lockdowns? Explain that one. Widespread support, my ass. When citizens descend on a state capitol brandishing guns, they weren't brandishing, they were holstered or hanging from them. They were not brandishing them. They effectively end any commitment to democratic debate. Bullshit. You're trying to make it so that carrying a weapon is brandishing it. There is a difference between brandishing a weapon, which is taking your weapon and pointing it all around at someone, okay, and just carrying a fucking weapon. But you don't want that distinction to be known because you're a fucking scumbag woman. You are a sleazy piece of shit. Wow. While gun control advocates point out that 36,000 Americans are killed by guns each year, the overwhelming majority are suicides, it is also essential to consider how guns threaten First Amendment rights and the will of democratic majorities. First Amendment rights. How the hell is exercising their First Amendment right while carrying, so as in exercising their Second Amendment right, limiting the First Amendment? That makes absolutely no sense. And this idea of democratic majorities. You literally had, and he admitted it, you had Bloomberg talking about how he bought the fucking election in Virginia. That is not a majority. As in the majority of the will of the people. That was a bought fucking election. You are a fucking delusional bitch. The idea that a right to bear arms is necessary to protect oneself from a tyrannical government implies that violence would at some point be justified. Yes! Exactly! Sorry that you have a problem with that, because aren't you the same people that want to use the force of the state to take people, have the state at gunpoint take people's guns away from them? That's violence. And if they stand up to that, which the Second Amendment says they have a right to because of tyrannical government, the Constitution says that, and the Second Amendment gives them the means, I should say, because they're armed. You don't like that. You only like it when the government has the guns. The contrast between the anti-lockdown protests and the Black Lives Matter protests demonstrates the limits of the Second Amendment to check government tyranny. What? Mostly white, heavily armed protesters were able to challenge largely popular public health measures by intimidating state officials. They didn't intimidate state officials. Holy shit. This is what I was talking about on why, if you go to my previous videos where I talk about them doing this. This is why I said, you have the right to do it. I got no problems with it. I support the fact of the Second Amendment. But you're creating bad fucking optics. Because you're allowing stupid bitches like fucking Katie here to pull this shit. It wasn't largely popular public health measures. They weren't intimidating state officials. How the hell is just standing there intimidating someone? It isn't. And you're trying to compare fucking people that once the sun goes down, the curfews happen, they're looting and robbing and shit, with people who cleaned up stuff and left stuff nicer than when they showed up. There's no fucking comparison. However, it is difficult to imagine Black Lives Matter and other anti-police brutality protesters using the Second Amendment effectively. It stretches the bounds of credulity to think that heavily armed Black Lives Matter protests would be met with anything other than large-scale state-sanctioned violence. Well, if you fucking are out there causing shit, you're gonna get hit. They're not being peaceful. You people keep trying to portray them as all peaceful fucking loving hippie types. They're not. They looted fucking their own cities, destroyed their own neighborhoods. Oh, well, that was just outsiders. No, it was their own fucking people. They shit where they eat. These aren't people who understand that shitting where you eat is a bad thing. They destroyed their own shit. Minneapolis, the people who were protesting caused $25 million of damage in one night. So, of course, if they show up armed, shit's going to hit the fan. Oh, my God. The historical context of the Second Amendment also cannot be overlooked. What the fuck are you talking about? The fact that it literally says that it's a right that shall not be infringed, and then the founding fathers made it clear the whole point of the Second Amendment was so that a tyrannical government, can be fought back against if and when the United States becomes one. During debates regarding the ratification of the Constitution, some anti-federalists took particular notice of Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. The offending passage gives Congress the authority to call forth and train militias. Oh, and now we got to bring up this to make their bullshit arguments about militias. Or at least she's going to try, I bet. At the time, Southern slaveholders worried that since the federal government was given power over the militias, Congress could eventually block Southern states from using their militias to put down slave rebellions. Oh my God, no, it's slavery. The Second Amendment is about fucking slavery. Are you kidding me? The full text of the Second Amendment states, a well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state. Okay? Two separate things right there that go along. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Okay? I don't see any problems with that. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. It is not an accident that James Madison, a slaveholder himself, mentions the need for states to have militias in the Second Amendment. This is not about, oh my God, the whole point of the fucking militia, you stupid bitch, had nothing to do with the slaves. It had absolutely nothing to do with the slaves. It had to do with the fact of you are talking about a new founded nation that needs to be able to defend itself but does not have a full-time military. So, in order to defend itself, we needed militias that were state-backed, state-funded in order to do that. Go learn history. I have a fucking degree in it. You clearly don't. You don't know your goddamn ass from your elbow when it comes to history. Oh my God. This is so fucking stupid. This bitch seriously thinks this is going to fly. The great irony here is that the Second Amendment can be read a different way, as protecting Americans from an overly militarized police force. No, not at all. The use of the term militias in both Article 1, Section 8 and the Second Amendment is a reflection of the fact that the founders feared permanent professional standing armies would be a threat to liberty. But the police are not a standing fucking army. The Second Amendment mentions militias because the framers intended military units made up of part-time citizen soldiers to be the first line of defense. Well, not necessarily true. They wanted a limited full-time force. Okay? Most of the conscripts would be ones that were brought up in times of need. But you still have a small militia, okay, that can be geared up to be a much larger one. But what I'm getting at is you have a small amount of full-timers. The photos and video footage from around the country of a heavily militarized police force firing rubber bullets and tear gas into crowds of peaceful protesters certainly seems to justify the founders' warnings to the dangers of standing armies. They were not peaceful protesters. If the police are firing fucking rubber bullets and tear gas into the crowd, it's because they're fucking... If you act like shit, you're going to get hit. They were acting like shit. If they were just out there being peaceful, there would be no way that the fucking police would be able to sit there and tear gas and shoot rubber bullets at them and have it fly. See, that's why the majority of Americans had no problems with the fact of the National Guard going in and the police standing up to these fucking idiots. So your narrative doesn't work. Because the American public is supporting what's going on because they're looking at these people acting like fools, destroying neighborhoods, destroying whole cities. And they're like, well, if they get tear gassed or shot with a rubber bullet, as long as it stops them, they ain't going to die. Fuck it. They got no problem with it. And the First Amendment says peaceably assemble, okay, to exercise it. They're not peaceably assembling. They're looting. They're fucking burning shit down. The First Amendment protections of freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, and freedom of the press have proven to be the most effective tool for civil rights leaders, past and present, to demand justice and challenge instances of government oppression. Okay, and the Second Amendment's there to protect the First Amendment. In contrast, the Second Amendment has historically been a tool of the oppressors rather than the oppressed. Really? Go learn history, because the Second Amendment and the NRA, which was founded so that blacks would have their Second Amendment rights protected from Southern racist scumbag Democrats trying to prevent them from being able to exercise that constitutional right, all right, stopped a lot of them from getting lynched because you know what? Those racist Southern Democrats that did the lynchings and shit, they were afraid they might get fucking shot. Go figure. So there were less lynchings overall, if you think about it, you know, on the whole, because of the NRA and the Second Amendment. Because do you honestly think the numbers of lynchings there would have been any less if they didn't have the right to fucking defend themselves thanks to the NRA fighting for their Second Amendment rights? Of course not. You are a fucking piece of shit. It is time to let go of the myth that the Second Amendment is an effective tool for protecting individual liberties. It's not a myth. It's a reality. You just don't like that reality. Katie Schofield has a PhD in political science from Indiana University with a focus on comparative constitutional law. Well, obviously, she has no clue about the Constitution. And she was awarded a Fulbright grant to study the Ecuadorian Constitution. I'm sorry. That's some funny shit. Oh, God, this is funny. They're trying to fucking play it like the whole point of the Second Amendment was to keep slaves in order. Because, we needed militias to keep the wow. To keep this... Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just having fucking issues processing that because it's just so fucked up. To try to say that the whole point of the Second Amendment was for militias so that the slave owners could stop revolts. I think I've covered this well enough. I'm going to leave things here. If you liked this video, depending on where you are watching it, please give it an upvote or thumbs up. If you want to know when new content of mine hits the internet, don't forget to subscribe to one or more of my social media or video accounts listed here. Also, with YouTube, don't forget to ring that bell. You can find all of my video content on both BitChute and YouTube. This may not be the case with other places I upload to, but I will try to minimize this happening. You are always welcome to interact with me at any of these sites on the list, so feel free to do so. If you have anything you want me to cover in a video, when it comes to news or current events, send it right along to me. I will try to do my best to cover it. As always, thank you for watching.